I used to believe that my life was predictable, and for the most part, I liked it that way. My name is Ethan Carter, 38 years old, married to Laura for 10 years. We had what most would call a stable marriage: regular date nights, inside jokes, shared responsibilities, and the occasional bickering that never lasted more than a few hours. Laura was the type of woman who turned heads without trying. At 35, she still had that youthful glow, and even after all these years, I found myself watching her with admiration when she wasn't paying attention. She worked in marketing, always surrounded by clients and co-workers, always networking. I, on the other hand, was more grounded, a software engineer who enjoyed the quiet comfort of our home. Opposites attract, or at least, that's what I told myself whenever I felt a little out of place at her work events. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom home in the suburbs, a place we had chosen together after our second year of marriage. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours. We had no kids, something we had talked about but never fully committed to. Laura always said she wanted to focus on her career a little longer, and I had no reason to doubt her. But lately, something had shifted. Small cracks in a perfect life. At first, it was nothing major, just little things that made me pause. Laura started coming home later than usual, always with an excuse that sounded reasonable but felt off. Had to stay late for a meeting. Went out for drinks with colleagues. Traffic was awful today. Sure, that all made sense. But when I tried calling her one evening at 10:30 p.m., just to check in, she didn't pick up. She texted me half an hour later, saying she had left her phone on silent. Not a big deal, right? Except it happened again. And again. Then there were the phone calls. 3 times in the past month, I picked up the home phone, only to hear the line go dead immediately. Once or twice, I wouldn't have thought much of it, but 3 times? That was weird. And then there was the perfume incident. Laura had always worn a subtle floral fragrance, something light and familiar. But one evening, she came home smelling like something different, musky, heavier, something unfamiliar. When I casually mentioned it, she brushed it off with a laugh. Oh, one of the girls at work let me try her new perfume. I didn't like it much, though. Her explanation was simple. Maybe too simple. A change in behavior. I started observing her more closely, and the changes became harder to ignore. She was spending more time on her phone, always tilting the screen away from me when she texted. She suddenly became protective of her laptop, taking it with her to the bedroom instead of leaving it in the living room like she used to. She stopped asking about my day. I decided to test something. For the next 2 weeks, I barely spoke to her. Not out of pettiness, but to see how she would react. If she cared. At first, she didn't notice. Then, after a few days, she became affectionate, too affectionate. Morning kisses. Surprise hugs. A sudden interest in my work. It felt forced. Then, 10 days in, she did something unexpected. She initiated intimacy. That night, after dinner, she reached for my hand, led me to the bedroom, and whispered, "Come on, Ethan, I need you." But something about it felt off. Like she was trying to erase my suspicions rather than actually wanting me. I played along, but I stayed silent the entire time. When it was over, she nestled against me, satisfied. But I felt nothing. Just cold emptiness. The message that changed everything. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But the next morning, while Laura was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't one to snoop, but something about the way she had been guarding her phone made me hesitate. I glanced at the screen. One new message. Had an amazing time yesterday. Can't wait to see you again. Winking face. My stomach dropped. I didn't recognize the number. And just like that, my world began to crack. I sat there, staring at Laura's phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. Had an amazing time yesterday. Can't wait to see you again. Winking face. The message glowed on the screen, a taunting reminder that something was deeply, horribly wrong. My fingers hovered over the phone, every muscle in my body screaming at me to unlock it, to dig deeper, to find out the truth once and for all. But I hesitated. Not because I was afraid of invading her privacy, I had every damn right to know what was going on, but because once I did this, there would be no turning back. If I opened that phone, if I found more, then I had to face the truth. And I wasn't sure I was ready. Laura was still in the shower. The sound of water running masked the chaos in my mind. I could hear her humming, as if nothing was wrong, as if everything in our life wasn't about to collapse. My hands clenched into fists. I tapped the screen, and the notification disappeared. I needed to be smart. I grabbed my phone and took a quick photo of the message before putting hers back exactly where it had been. Then, moving fast, I walked out of the bedroom and into the hallway, trying to act normal. As if anything could ever be normal again. Denial, then realization. For the next few hours, I went through the motions of my day like a ghost. I worked from home, as I usually did, but my brain refused to focus. Emails blurred together. Lines of code might as well have been ancient hieroglyphs. I couldn't stop thinking about that message. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. But no matter how much I tried to convince myself, I couldn't ignore the gut-wrenching feeling in my stomach. The pieces didn't add up. The late nights. The overprotective behavior with her phone. The sudden change in affection. The lie about the perfume. And now, a text message from an unknown number saying they couldn't wait to see her again. I wasn't stupid. I had spent years writing software, analyzing data, finding patterns. My job was to spot inconsistencies, to make sense of chaos. And now, looking at my own life, I could see the pattern. Laura was hiding something. And I was going to find out exactly what it was. The first clue. I started small. That evening, when Laura came home, I watched her closely. Every word she said, every move she made, it was all evidence now. "Hey, babe," she said casually, dropping her purse on the counter. "What do you want for dinner?" Her voice was light, effortless, like she hadn't just spent the night with someone else. I forced a smile. "Anything's fine." She leaned in, kissed my cheek. "You okay? You seem quiet." I looked into her eyes, searching for any sign of guilt, but she was good. Too good. "Just tired," I said. "Long day at work." She nodded, running her fingers through her hair. "Yeah, same." Liar. We ate dinner, talked about nothing important, and later, when she went to bed, I finally had my chance. I opened my laptop and got to work. Hunting for the truth. Step 1: find out who sent that message. I copied the number from the screenshot I had taken earlier and ran a reverse phone lookup. No name, just a city and carrier info. Fine. That was expected. Step 2: check her behavior. I had never been the kind of husband who snooped, but desperate times called for desperate measures. I needed to know if she was meeting someone, if she was texting someone. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I installed a small monitoring app on her laptop, one that would log keystrokes, screenshots, and messages. I hated myself for doing it. But I needed proof. That night, I barely slept. The proof I didn't want to find. The next morning, while Laura was in the shower, I checked the logs. And my world shattered. There it was. A full conversation between her and someone. The messages weren't just casual. They weren't friendly. They were intimate. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. I miss you already. Wish I could wake up next to you. I wish I could too, but Ethan would notice." I nearly vomited. It wasn't just flirting. This was a full-blown affair. And she knew I suspected something. The final straw. I needed to see it with my own eyes. So, I kept playing dumb. For the next few days, I acted normal. I pretended everything was fine, like I wasn't dying inside. And then, on Friday night, I finally got my chance. Laura told me she had a late work dinner. I knew it was a lie. So I followed her. I stayed a few cars behind as she drove across town, my heart pounding like a war drum. She pulled into a small boutique hotel, parked, and got out. And then a man walked up to her. Tall. Well-dressed. Confident. She smiled. And then she kissed him. Not a friendly peck. Not a casual embrace. A full, passionate kiss. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Everything I had suspected was now real. This was the truth. Undeniable. Laura was having an affair. And now, I had a choice. Confront her? Or destroy her? I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard I thought it might snap. There she was, Laura, my wife of 10 years, wrapped in the arms of another man. Their embrace wasn't just friendly. It wasn't innocent. It was intimate, passionate, shameless. They were laughing. They were comfortable. They were used to this. I had spent the last few days desperately searching for proof, hoping that I was wrong, that this was all in my head. But there was no mistaking what I was seeing now. Laura had been cheating on me, and this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment mistake. This was planned. Repeated. Ongoing. I could feel my body shaking, a mix of rage, heartbreak, and disbelief swirling together into something toxic. I had two choices. Confront her here and now, in public, in front of him, let the rage explode. Wait. Be patient. Make her suffer. I forced myself to breathe. Losing control wouldn't help me. No. This wasn't just about her betrayal. This was about justice. So instead of charging out of my car and making a scene, I did something much, much worse. I grabbed my phone. And I recorded everything. The final piece of the puzzle. The camera captured it all. Laura, smiling up at him, trailing her fingers down his chest. Him, whispering something into her ear that made her giggle like a schoolgirl. The way she kissed him, not just with her lips, but with her whole body, pressing against him like they had done this 100 times before. A hotel. A secret rendezvous. A double life. I sat there for another 20 minutes, watching as they disappeared inside, knowing full well what was happening behind those doors. I felt like my soul was being ripped out of me. For 10 years, I had trusted her. For 10 years, I had been loyal to her. And for 10 years, she had been lying to me. But now, I held all the cards. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to destroy her. The waiting game. I didn't go home right away. I needed time to think. I drove aimlessly for an hour, replaying everything in my head. Every little lie she had told me. Every time she had come home late. Every time she had been distant. And suddenly, it all made sense. The way she had overcompensated with sudden affection. The way she had picked fights over nothing. The way she had pushed me away, slowly, carefully, deliberately. She wasn't just cheating, she was phasing me out. She was planning her escape. And that's when I realized. She didn't just betray me. She was replacing me. That realization hit me harder than anything else. It wasn't just about lust. It wasn't just about a fling. She wanted out of our life. But she wasn't going to walk away clean. The setup. I went home and did exactly what I knew she never expected me to do. I acted normal. When Laura finally came home at 2:15 a.m., I was sitting in the living room, watching TV. She walked in, looking flustered but composed. "Oh," she said, surprised to see me awake. "You're still up?" I looked at her, at the makeup that had been hurriedly reapplied, at the slightly messy hair, at the way she avoided eye contact. I smiled. Played dumb. "Yeah. Just couldn't sleep." She hesitated for a second, then forced a smile. "Work dinner ran late," she said, the lie slipping off her tongue effortlessly. You know how it is. I nodded. Yeah. I know how it is. And that was it. She had no idea that I knew everything. She had no idea that I had the proof. She had no idea that her entire world was about to come crashing down. The confrontation, breaking her. The next evening, I set the stage. I made dinner. Her favorite. I poured wine, set the table nicely, made it look like everything was perfectly fine. She came home, looking relieved, probably thinking she had gotten away with it. She kissed my cheek. Wow, this looks amazing. I smiled. I wanted tonight to be special. We ate. We talked. I let her think she was safe. Then, after dinner, I leaned back and took a deep breath. And I dropped the bomb. So, who is he? Her fork froze midair. She blinked. What? I smiled, cold, calculating, dangerous. You heard me. Her face went pale. Ethan, what are you talking about? I pulled out my phone. Pressed play. And there it was, the video of her and her lover, right there, in full HD. She gasped. She reached for the phone, I yanked it back. No, I said, my voice razor sharp. You don't get to touch this. You don't get to talk your way out of this. You don't get to fucking lie to me anymore. She started shaking. Ethan, I slammed my hand on the table. Don't. Silence. Just her, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. Good. I let it sit for a few seconds before I leaned in, my voice quiet but deadly. How long? She swallowed hard. Ethan, How long, Laura? A pause. A hesitation. Then, finally, the truth slipped out. 6 months. I exhaled slowly. 6 months. Half a year. She had been lying to me, sneaking around, betraying me, for 6 fucking months. I should have felt devastated. But all I felt was rage. You are disgusting, I said coldly. I trusted you. I gave you everything. And this is what you do. She started crying. I didn't mean to. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Bullshit. She looked at me, desperate, broken, scared. But I didn't care. I stood up. Walked to the counter. Grabbed a manila envelope and tossed it in front of her. What is this? She whispered. I smiled. Enjoyed the fear in her eyes. Divorce papers. Her breath hitched. Sign them, I said. Or I send that video to everyone you know. She stared at me, her whole world collapsing. I didn't feel bad. Not one bit. Laura just sat there, staring at the divorce papers like they were a foreign language. Her hands trembled. Her breathing was shaky, uneven, almost panicked. I could see it the moment she realized her game was over. And I felt nothing. No sympathy. No sadness. No regret. Just a cold, settled sense of justice. You're joking, she whispered. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Do I look like I'm joking? She looked up at me, eyes wide, searching for any sign of weakness in my face. She found none. Her lips parted. Then closed. She swallowed hard, her mind racing for an escape. But there was none. Because I held every card now. I let the silence drag out, let her feel it. The weight of consequences. And then, finally, she spoke. Ethan, she whispered, I cut her off. Save it. She flinched. Save the excuses. Save the fake tears. Save the bullshit, Laura. It's done. Her face crumpled. Please, can we talk about this? I laughed. Actually laughed. Talk about what? I asked, my voice sharp. The 6 months you spent lying to my face? The nights you worked late when you were actually in a cheap hotel room? Or how about the fact that I had to catch you on camera because I knew you'd never tell me the truth otherwise? She winced. I wasn't holding back anymore. Ethan, she tried again, I messed up, but. Messed up? I repeated, incredulous. You didn't mess up, Laura. You made a choice. Over and over and over again. You made a choice every single time you snuck out. Every time you texted him. Every time you lied to my face. Tears started to well up in her eyes. I felt nothing. No, I said. I talk now. You listen. She blinked rapidly, caught off guard by my tone. I gave you everything, I continued. Everything. And you threw it away for some asshole who probably won't even stick around once he realizes you have no safety net. Her mouth opened. Closed. Did you even think this through? I pressed. Did you have an exit plan? Or was I just supposed to keep playing the clueless husband while you had your fun? She looked down, ashamed. I sighed. You know what? It doesn't even matter anymore. I grabbed a pen from the drawer and slid it across the table. Sign it. She just stared at it, like the pen was made of poison. Ethan, she whispered, I don't want a divorce. I felt my jaw clench. I leaned in, voice dangerously low. That's not your decision to make. The bargaining phase. She started shaking her head, desperation creeping into her voice. Ethan, please, she said, her tone raw. We can fix this. I scoffed. Fix this? Fix what, Laura? You can't fix this. You can't just take it back. She reached for my hand. I pulled away like her touch burned me. Her eyes filled with panic. I swear to you, I'll do anything, she said. I'll cut him off, I'll prove it to you, I'll go to therapy, whatever it takes. Just, don't leave me. I stared at her. This was fascinating. Laura had cheated on me for half a year, yet now, when she realized she was about to lose everything, she was suddenly ready to fight for our marriage? Too late. I tilted my head. Why now? She blinked. What? Why do you want to fix things now? I asked. You weren't trying to fix anything last week. Or last month. Or when you were sneaking off to meet him. Her face twisted in pain. She knew she had no good answer. Was it worth it? I asked, my voice eerily calm. She froze. I leaned forward. Was he worth it? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know, she whispered. I smirked. Wrong answer. She broke down, burying her face in her hands. Ethan, please. I love you. I actually felt my stomach turn. You don't love me, I said, shaking my head. You love what I gave you. The security. The home. The life. But love? No. She sobbed harder. I waited. Let her fall apart. Then I spoke again. This is how it's going to go, I said. Her crying slowed, like she knew the final blow was coming. You're going to sign those papers, I continued. You're going to pack your shit. And you're going to leave. Her lip trembled. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. Not my problem. She looked genuinely horrified. Ethan, I cut her off. No, Laura. I don't care. Her eyes flashed. I could see it now, the shift. She knew she had lost. And when people lose, they either beg or they fight. She had tried begging. Now, she was ready to fight. The anger phase. She grabbed the divorce papers and slammed them back on the table. You want me gone, she snapped. Fine. But I'm not leaving with nothing. I laughed. actually laughed. Excuse me? You heard me, she hissed. Half of everything we own is mine. The house, the savings, all of it. I grinned. Oh, Laura. She hesitated, like she didn't like the way I said her name. I leaned forward. You think I didn't plan for this? I whispered. She went still. I pulled out another folder. Tossed it in front of her. She looked at it. Then back at me. What is this? She asked cautiously. Proof. She swallowed hard. Proof of what? I smirked. Proof that you used our joint accounts to pay for your little affair. Hotel stays, dinners, gifts. Her face drained of color. I continued. Proof that you used our home, my home, as your meeting spot. She looked like she might faint. And proof that you lied about your whereabouts to your job, I finished. Her mouth opened, then closed. Because now she knew. If she fought me on this, I would ruin her. I picked up the pen. Placed it in her shaking hand. Sign. The papers. She hesitated. And then, finally, she did. The moment her signature hit the page, something inside me let go. The anger. The heartbreak. The betrayal. It was over. She was nothing to me now. I stood up, grabbed the papers, and without another word, I walked out. I walked out of the house that night feeling weightless. Not in a good way. Not in a way that meant I was free. Just empty. Like I had just watched a life die, and even though it was a life I didn't want anymore, the weight of it still sat heavy on my chest. The house, our house, felt like a stranger's place now. I couldn't stand the thought of staying there another night. So I didn't. I got in my car and drove to a hotel. Checked in. Collapsed onto the bed. And for the first time in days, I let myself just breathe. Laura had signed the divorce papers. It was over. Except, it wasn't. Not really. Because I knew her. And I knew this wasn't the last I'd hear from her. I was right. 3 days later. I hadn't spoken to Laura since the night she signed the papers. I had stayed away from the house, letting her pack up her things. I had no interest in being there to watch her take apart our life piece by piece. But 3 days later, I got the text. Laura, we need to talk. I stared at my phone, debating whether to even answer. I had nothing to say to her. And yet, a part of me wanted to know. Know what, though? What excuse she was going to come up with? What justification she was going to try? What lie she would tell herself to make herself feel better? I sighed, rubbing my temples. I didn't owe her anything. But I needed closure. So I answered. Me, where? The coffee shop. We met at a small coffee shop near our old house, neutral territory. I got there first, ordered a black coffee, and sat by the window, staring out at the street. She walked in 5 minutes later. She looked different. Or maybe I was just seeing her differently. For years, she had been the love of my life. Now, she was just someone I used to know. She walked over hesitantly. Hey. I nodded. Hey. She sat down across from me, hands wrapped around her coffee cup like she was steadying herself. I waited. She finally sighed. I don't even know where to start. I shrugged. Start with the truth. She flinched. Like the truth was something she wasn't used to saying out loud. She took a shaky breath. I messed up. I let out a bitter chuckle. Yeah. You did. She swallowed hard. I wasn't happy, Ethan. I rolled my eyes. Oh, here we go. Her eyes snapped up. What's that supposed to mean? I leaned back. It means I knew you were going to say that. It's the go-to excuse, isn't it? I wasn't happy. Like that makes it okay. She looked down. I didn't mean. Didn't mean what, Laura? I cut her off. Didn't mean to lie to my face? Didn't mean to screw some guy behind my back? Didn't mean to throw 10 years of marriage in the trash? She bit her lip. I don't know why I did it. I shook my head, laughing without humor. Bullshit. Her eyes flashed. Excuse me? You heard me, I said, voice low. You know exactly why you did it. She stared at me, mouth slightly open. I pressed on. You wanted something different, I said coldly. You wanted excitement. You wanted the thrill of sneaking around. And you didn't care what it did to me. Tears welled in her eyes. That's not true. I cut her off. Then tell me, Laura. If you were so unhappy, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you say something? Why did you go behind my back instead? She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I leaned forward. Because you liked it. Didn't you? She inhaled sharply, shaking her head. No. I scoffed. Yes, you did. You liked the attention. You liked the secrecy. You liked knowing you could have your stable husband at home while you played your little games on the side. Her hands trembled around her cup. You knew what you were doing, I continued. And you kept doing it anyway. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Because she knew I was right. The truth comes out. Finally, after a long pause, she sighed. I guess. I wanted to feel wanted again. I stared at her. You were wanted, Laura. By me. She blinked fast, like she was trying not to cry. I know, she whispered. And I took that for granted. I didn't answer. Because what was there to say? She had taken me for granted. She had ruined everything. And now, she wanted to talk about feelings? Too late. You didn't just cheat on me, I said quietly. You made me question everything. Every memory. Every moment. Every single part of our life together. She wiped at her eyes. I know. I exhaled, feeling the last remnants of my love for her dissolve. I hope it was worth it, I said. She looked up sharply. Ethan. No, I cut her off. I don't want an apology. I don't want an explanation. I don't even want revenge. She swallowed hard. Then what do you want? I looked her in the eye. Nothing, I said. I want nothing from you anymore. She sucked in a breath. And for the first time, I saw it. She had lost me. Completely. Finally. Irrevocably. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then nodded. I guess this is really it, then, she whispered. I nodded. Yeah. It is. Silence. Then she did something that caught me completely off guard. She reached across the table, hesitating, and then she placed her wedding ring on the table. A lump formed in my throat. But I didn't pick it up. I just nodded. Then, without another word, I stood up. And walked away. The end of us. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. That chapter of my life was closed. For the first time in a long time. I was free. And this time? I wasn't looking for a new beginning. I was just letting the past burn. I didn't go home that night. Hell, I didn't even know where home was anymore. Everything that had once been familiar, safe, mine, was now tainted. The house. The memories. Even my own goddamn bed. So instead of going back, I drove. 4 hours. Through the city, past neighborhoods I recognized, down roads I'd never traveled before. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't sit still. Because if I did? If I stopped moving for even a second? It would all crash down on me. Drifting in the aftermath. I checked into a hotel at 3 in the morning. A different one this time. Somewhere far from my old life. A place where no one knew my name. The receptionist barely looked up as I handed over my card. And when I got to my room, I collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. It was over. The divorce papers were signed. Laura was out of my life. And yet, why did it still feel like I was suffocating? The hollow days that followed. I took a week off work. Not because I wanted to. Because I had no choice. I was useless, completely unable to function. Every time I sat down to check emails, my mind wandered. Every time I tried to focus, my thoughts spiraled. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Not the Laura I had seen in that hotel parking lot. Not the liar, the cheater, the stranger in my wife's skin. No. I saw the old Laura. The woman I had built a life with. The woman I had trusted. The woman I had loved beyond reason. And I hated myself for it. Because that woman? She never existed. The world moves on, but I don't. Friends started reaching out. People I hadn't spoken to in weeks, some even months. Word had gotten around. I hadn't told anyone. But Laura had. She must have gone to damage control mode the second she realized she had lost me. Maybe she told people it was a mutual split. Maybe she painted me as the cold, unfeeling husband who just walked away. Maybe she told the truth. Unlikely. Either way, I started getting texts, voicemails, invitations to grab drinks. I ignored them all. Because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to be normal. Wasn't ready to pretend. Wasn't ready to smile like I wasn't drowning. I knew people meant well. But right now? I just wanted to be left alone. The night it finally hit me. It had been 2 weeks since the confrontation. Since I had last seen Laura. Since I had walked out of that coffee shop and left my old life behind. I was back in my temporary apartment, a small, soulless rental that I had picked because it felt like nothing. Nothing like our house. Nothing like our past. Nothing like what we used to be. And that night? That was when it happened. I woke up at 3 a.m. Cold sweat. Shaky breath. I had dreamed about her again. Not about the affair. Not about the betrayal. Just about us. A random memory from years ago. A lazy Sunday morning, tangled in bedsheets. Her laughing at something stupid I said. Me watching her like she was my whole goddamn world. And when I woke up? For a split second. I forgot. Forgot everything that had happened. Forgot that she had destroyed us. Forgot that she had ripped my heart out and stomped on it. For a split second, I reached for her. And then reality hit me like a freight train. She was gone. And she was never coming back. I sat up. Swung my legs over the bed. Buried my face in my hands. And I broke. Fully. Completely. Violently. I hadn't cried. Not once. Not through the discovery. Not through the confrontation. Not through the divorce. I had held it all in. Like a goddamn dam about to burst. And that night? It finally did. I sobbed like a man who had lost everything. Because I had. Not just my marriage. Not just my wife. I had lost who I was. And I didn't know how the fuck to get him back. The rebuild, or something like it. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I got up. I showered. I shaved. I looked at myself in the mirror, really looked. I looked like hell. Like I had been fighting a war and losing. But I was still here. I wasn't dead. I wasn't broken beyond repair. I was just different. And maybe that was okay. Maybe the version of me that had loved Laura? Maybe he had to die, so that someone new could be born. A final goodbye. 2 days later, I got one last text from Laura. Laura, I left the last of my things at the house. Let me know if I forgot anything. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed out a response. Me, don't worry about it. Whatever's left, I'll throw out. It was cold. Final. But so was she. She had thrown away our life like it was nothing. Now, I was doing the same. She responded a few minutes later. Laura, I really am sorry, Ethan. I didn't answer. Because I knew the truth now. Some mistakes? Some betrayals? Some wounds? They don't get forgiven. The end, or the beginning? I don't know what comes next. Maybe I rebuild. Maybe I stay bitter forever. Maybe I learn how to trust again. Maybe I don't. All I know is this. I survived. And sometimes? That's enough. For now.